I'm ready? Yeah, okay, right, okay, so observability, it's very, very expensive, it's really horrible to work with sometimes, and it's very, very difficult. I'm going to give you some facts about observability, and I'm going to give you some tips for how you can halve your observability costs nice and fast, nice and easy. 99% of your index data never searched. So indexing, the whole point of indexing data is to search it, we index it, and then we never do anything with it. Wasted money. It's part of the reason why observability is so expensive. We have loads of stats at the CoreLogix booth, by the way. We're bright green, you can't miss us. So, the next question that comes along is, do we have too much data? The answer is no, we have the exact right amount of data that we need. We just don't manage it in the best possible way. That's what this lightning talk's about, how to manage that data properly. So step one, before you're going to go after everything, is you create some use cases for your data. So use cases can be things like logs that we never queried, traces that take up space, or error logs that haunt my waking hours and turn even my sweetest dreams into feverish nightmares, and many of them do. So the problem with that is, of course, that you have to deal with those use cases. You have to define those use cases, because without them, you end up with 1 million of them. And it's very, very difficult to categorize that data and then save some money on it. The next thing you need is psychological safety, because essentially what you're doing is publishing all of your errors to the entire company and saying we have to find out which ones of these we need to keep. Everyone needs to feel comfortable with those errors and that kind of thing. You don't want any collaborative barriers to revealing that information. So with that in mind, has anyone seen this pattern before? So essentially you have some logs, they're produced, they're stored in OpenSearch, then after some time they're kind of degraded down into lower performance storage and then into long-term storage. Has anyone seen this before? Yeah. Who's implemented this? Hands up. Hands up. Implemented? Good. So for those people, there is no psychological safety. Shame. Shame on all of you. Essentially what we're saying here is that this is not a use case driven approach. This is the status quo, by the way. This is normal. I've done it many, many times. But what you do instead of being really like straight into the index is you say, okay, we query some of this data all the time, straight into the index. We never touch this data. We just have to hold on to it because the legal team told us so, straight into the archive. Don't go straight into OpenSearch because that's your most expensive place. Instead, have different use cases and associated storage and performance with those use cases. That alone will save you a fortune in operational costs, especially if you're using like a SaaS provider. Some of them don't offer this, we do. So definitely go after that. So next thing, don't waste time with everything is fine. Most of your data is just telling you that everything is okay. How much time have we got? Oh, sweet, yeah. Most of our data is telling us everything is fine. You don't, even software engineers are not that needy to be told thousands of times a second that everything is okay, you know? So you don't need to wait for that information to be constantly bombarded with you. Instead, what you really care about is those 500. So an example is using tail sampling and OpenTelemetry. Traces are very, very expensive, especially to index and hold on to for a really long time. Most people hold on to them for at most a week. They're usually operational. So you don't need most of the 200 OK, so just get rid of them. Just store half of them, store a quarter of them, whatever the tail sampler decides. That alone will save you money, and it's purely configuration driven. Next thing, the Yagni principle. What does Yagni stand for, anyone? Exactly, this good. Nerds in the crowd, it's nice. So you ain't gonna need it. Essentially, the principle here is simple. Look at how you use the data and store it in the format for your use. So for example, if you store logs, rather than storing the log, if you only need one number out of that log, you don't need a full document. A full document is expensive to hold, expensive to index, expensive to query. A single number is a metric. Metrics are not expensive. You can hold on to them for a really long time and it'll perform really well. So transform that data into a metric, drop the rest. That's a really, really efficient way of saving money without losing any visibility. Of course, you need to understand your use cases so you can actually understand the data and how it's used. Likewise, some of your data you're just never going to touch. You just know there's some of this data that you wonder why it's there. It's just sprayed out of the CTO's pet project or something, who knows. And you never ever query it, you never use it. It doesn't drive dashboards or alarms or anything. So rather than keep hold of it, rather than burn money, take up space, slow down queries, just get rid of it. Be brave. And if you're really nervous about it, just send it straight to the archive, if you can. So that kind of routing, by the way, you can implement in OpenTelemetry, set up pipelines to route the data into different destinations if you want, completely configuration driven. If you don't want to do that, CoreLogix has the no, I'm not going to sell it, but come to the booth if you want to find out how to do it without any coding anyway. So if you really want to scare the hell out of a sales rep, this is your favorite question to ask. What tools have you built to enable cost optimization? So if you're using SaaS observability, this is the one question they've almost never prepared for. So always ask this question because it puts them on the back foot and you'll get an honest answer. Do not settle for documentation, look for tooling. Tooling is the way you know they've invested in it. That's me. There's Twitter. And I started a podcast called Only Spans because I'm hilarious. If you're interested, there's QR codes for the relevant things anyway. But thank you very much for listening. And that is 4 minutes 50, baby. Thank you very much. Cheers, guys.